What if I told you that everything you know about the world is wrong, and in fact, it's impossible to know anything at all? This, in essence, is the position held by the radical skeptic. Skepticism has a long history. In the 4th century BCE, the Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi dreamt that he had become a butterfly. Upon waking, he wondered whether he was truly a man who had dreamt of being a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming of being a man. This raises the unsettling question: how can we be sure that our perceived reality is not just an illusion? Centuries later, in 1641, Rene Descartes explored a similar problem in Meditations on First Philosophy. He questioned whether he could trust his senses, imagining an evil demon that deceives humanity by creating a false illusion of reality. This demon, he argued, was capable of manipulating not just our sensory perceptions, but also our thoughts, reasoning, and even memories. If such a deception were possible, then everything he perceived about the external world could be false, including basic logical truths and mathematical facts. This radical doubt extended even to seemingly self-evident principles, such as 2 plus 3 equaling 5. By entertaining the possibility of such an all-powerful deceiver, Descartes sought to strip away every belief that could be doubted. This led to his famous phrase, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Even if the demon deceived him about everything else, the very act of doubting proved the existence of his own mind. While Descartes could doubt everything else, he could not doubt that he was thinking, which confirmed his existence as a thinking being. Building on this idea, another version of the skeptical hypothesis emerged in the form of the brain-in-a-vat scenario, formalized by Hilary Putnam. Imagine you were merely a disembodied brain suspended in a vat of nutrients, with electrodes stimulating your neurons to create the illusion of an external world. If this were the case, even basic beliefs, such as knowing that you have two hands, would be false. Because we cannot definitively rule out this possibility, radical skepticism claims that we cannot truly know anything about the external world. Jumping forward to modern times, a similar idea has been reinterpreted through the lens of technology and artificial intelligence. The simulation hypothesis, proposed by philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003, takes the skepticism a step further. If humans can create sophisticated simulations with conscious beings, it is very likely that they will, and that the simulated worlds will eventually develop their own simulations. Eventually, simulated worlds vastly outnumber real ones. By probability alone, any given conscious entity, including you, is more likely to be in a simulation than in an actual physical reality. It is important to point out here that Putnam and Bostrom are not proposing skeptical arguments. Neither of these thinkers would say that it's impossible for us to know anything about the world, and in fact, Putnam argues to the contrary in his paper. These examples are included to demonstrate how many ways we might be radically deceived about the world, and how this issue has manifested through different language and symbolism over time. At this point, the radical skeptic presents a general argument that goes something like this: I do not know that the skeptical hypothesis, whether it be an evil demon, a brain in a vat, or a computer simulation, is false. If I truly knew anything about the external world, I would have to know for certain that the skeptical hypothesis is false. Since I cannot prove that I am not radically deceived, I must concede that I don't know anything at all. But before we get carried away with this argument, it's worth asking, should we be skeptical of skepticism itself? While radical skepticism is a compelling position, there are strong reasons to reject it. One of the most persuasive counterarguments comes from epistemology, the study of knowledge. Knowledge is often defined as justified true belief. If I believe that I have two hands, my belief is true, and I have reasonable justification, such as seeing and feeling them, then I can say that I know I have two hands. More importantly, we don't require absolute certainty to claim knowledge. Imagine an everyday belief. If I remember parking my car in the driveway and later see it there, I can reasonably say that I know my car is in the driveway. This holds true even if there's a remote possibility that my car was stolen and replaced, or an alien spacecraft swapped it with an identical copy. Radical skepticism imposes an impossibly high standard for knowledge, demanding that we rule out every conceivable doubt, no matter how improbable. This ties in with the relevant alternatives theory, which suggests that knowledge only requires ruling out relevant alternatives, not every possible hypothetical doubt. For example, when determining if my car is in the driveway, seeing a car that looks a lot like mine is typically sufficient evidence to say that I know my car is in the driveway. However, imagine that there is a criminal organization in my neighborhood that has been stealing cars and replacing them with similar looking cardboard cutouts. The possibility that my car has been taken by these criminals becomes a relevant alternative to my car being in the driveway. So now I can't say I know just from seeing my car from a distance. However, the skeptical hypothesis is not a relevant alternative because it does not introduce a meaningful challenge to our justification for belief in the external world. Knowledge does not require eliminating every logically possible alternative, only those that are relevant in a given context. Since being a brain in a vat is not a relevant alternative to the real world existing, we can say that we know the world exists, even if we're not 100% certain. Furthermore, our senses are consistent. If every morning I wake up and my bedroom appears exactly as I left it the night before, that continuity provides some assurance that my perception is not completely deceptive. If I drop an object and it falls to the ground, that consistency of experience reassures us of the existence of the external world. To add another layer to this debate, philosopher G.E. Moore offers a different rebuttal to radical skepticism, one that flips the burden of proof. Instead of accepting the skeptic's demand that we disprove deception, Moore argues that our everyday experiences provide stronger evidence for reality than skepticism provides for radical doubt. He famously demonstrated this by raising his hands, declaring, "Here is one hand, here is another. If these hands exist, then the external world must exist." Moore's argument takes the skeptical structure and reverses it. The skeptic says, I do not know that I am not a brain in a vat. If I knew that I had two hands, I would know that I am not a brain in a vat. Therefore, I do not know that I have two hands. Moore counters, I know that I have two hands. If I know that I have two hands, then I know that I'm not a brain in a vat. Therefore, I know that I am not a brain in a vat. Rather than refuting radical skepticism through complex logical proofs, Moore emphasizes that some truths, such as the existence of our own hands, are more certain than any skeptical doubt. By presenting what he called a common sense argument, Moore effectively turned the skeptic's own reasoning against him. He argued that it was far more reasonable to accept the existence of one's hands than to entertain the hypothetical, improbable scenario that casts doubt on all of experience. If the skeptic insists that we might all be radically deceived, it's up to them to provide compelling evidence, not simply introduce doubt without justification. This pragmatic perspective strengthens Moore's stance, showing that skepticism alone is not enough to undermine our foundational beliefs. In the end, radical skepticism may never be fully refuted, but perhaps that's not the point. Instead of demanding an impossible level of clarity, we might do better to accept the limitations of human knowledge and focus on what we can reasonably infer about the world. While radical skepticism presents interesting philosophical challenges, it ultimately fails as a practical approach to knowledge. The requirement to disprove every conceivable doubt places an unreasonable burden on epistemology, effectively rendering all knowledge claims invalid and useless. However, as thinkers like G.E. Moore have demonstrated, some truths are more certain than others. The mere fact that we can navigate and interact with the world with a high degree of success suggests that our senses, while not infallible, are at least sufficiently reliable to justify belief in the external world. Moreover, the sheer consistency and predictability of our experiences reinforce the notion that our perceptions align with reality rather than being mere illusions. If we were entirely deceived, it would be difficult to explain why our understanding of the world remains so coherent and actionable across countless experiences. Instead of entertaining radical skepticism as a serious threat to knowledge, it is more rational to adopt a pragmatic approach, one that acknowledges the limitations of human perception but still allows us to function meaningfully. In short, while the radical skeptic challenge can sharpen our understanding of knowledge, it does not provide a viable reason to reject the reality we experience daily.